Hi peeps, welcome to today's installment in the Witchcraft and Tarot series. Today we're going to be talking about how to know when a tarot deck is your home deck. This is a great viewer request because we've just talked about stripping your practice back to basics during times of difficulty in your personal path, whether that's your earth path, your spiritual path, or the marriage thereof. I do want to start this by saying this is my experience with deciphering, discovering my home deck, and you should really trust your own intuition first and foremost always about which deck is your deck. And you'll know because you'll really feel it. And I do want to start by saying that. I think the first piece that you're going to have an awareness of when you find your home deck is that you're going to feel a deep sense of connection to it. So I'm going to show you all, while I'm talking, imagery from Tarot of Vampires, which, as many of you know, is my home deck. This deck is, I don't know, it was meant to be. As soon as I saw this deck, I just had an innate connection to it, an understanding of the story arc that the artist was creating. There was endless depths of study with this deck for me based upon the beautiful, incredible guidebook. And it was just a deck that felt comforting to me. So the first thing that I want you to check into when you're trying to decipher, like, is this deck my ride or die, is that you're going to feel a really deep sense of connection to it. Now, of course, it's not going to be the only tarot deck you work with. There are a plethora of tarot options out there, and they should all be explored. And as many of you know, whenever I do unboxings and reviews on the channel, I have decks that I work with very specifically for specific reasons, as well as decks that show up because they're chatty and they want to play with clients in readings as well. So don't feel like because you have a home deck, you can only ever work with that deck. The difference is that the home deck is going to be really comforting to you. And in those times when you do feel called to strip your practice back, to go back to basics, you know, whether it's because you're struggling or it's a dark time for you, then this is the deck that you're going to be able to turn to. That's going to give you the support that you need and the presence that you need, as well as the honesty and sense of connection that you need. So this is Tarot of Vampires by Ian Daniels, if anybody hasn't heard about that deck and would like to purchase it. So again, first thing is going to be feeling. You're going to feel a really deep sense of connection to the deck. The second thing is that the more that you work with the deck, you're both really going to be able to understand each other's languages and communicate together. So the deck is going to give you clarity, but it's going to be loving and supportive. It's not going to be a deck that knocks you, that knocks your teeth out every time that you approach the deck. That type of confronting deck is a very powerful medicine, but it's best used wisely. That's not a home deck. A home deck feels comforting, it feels supportive, but also truthful, right? And it's going to be a deck where you're able to go on long adventures with it, go down the rabbit hole of occult symbolism in this case, or also be able to just pull a card and have a sense of understanding and connection and feel supported on your spiritual path. So you're going to feel a sense of connection. You'll feel a sense of support to your spiritual journey and also to your personal journey. This isn't going to be just about divination or, working with the deck for a specific Sabbath or something like that. It's going to be because there's a conversation, there's communication, you're understanding each other when you approach the deck. The deck's energy marrying to your energy, creating this really beautiful space, this beautiful like harmony and a hum, right? This beautiful energetic hum that lets you know that it's your home deck. You will feel called to work with the deck when you do feel depressed, or that you're going through a difficult time. So when I say that, I don't mean that you're using the deck as a safety blanket. I mean, you'll feel called to pull from the deck because it offers you a sense of support, not because you're using it as a safety blanket to get a yes or a no answer to something that you want. It's a very different thing. And that's something else that I will be covering in a future video, is kind of finding balance with that, because I think that's really important, especially as, tarot's kind of at its, I guess, peak of popularity right now in the general public. So it's going to feel like home. That's why I call it a home deck, right? It's that deck that you go back to. It's going to be the first one that's with you. Another sign that this deck is your home deck is if you're traveling, if you have to go somewhere, if you know you're going to be away from home for an extended period of time, that's the deck that you're going to bring with you, because that's the one that you can't live without. Like, anytime I do a top 5 list for you guys when it comes to tarot and oracle decks, I know that a deck is a home deck if that deck always makes that list, right? I should also say here too that, you can have more than one home deck. So don't feel that you have to stick with just one deck. You can have multiple home decks. For me, Tarot of Vampires is my number 1, but Murder of Crows and the True Black Tarot are very close number 2s for me when it comes to home decks. So those decks that really, again, you really feel a sense of compassion, connection, but also inspiration, because there's another piece here too. It's not just about support emotionally or energetic support that you're looking for from a home deck. There's also a sense of like inspiration and creativity that comes from the working with the deck as well, excuse me. So it might be the deck that you really feel drawn to when you have a new idea for a creative project or a business project, or you want to get clarity about how to set goals for something specific that you're working on or working towards. That's another sign that it's a home deck for you. Another big sign for me is that I tend to journal with a deck that's a home deck a lot. So if I'm going to do a really big shadow journal entry for myself, or if I'm really like trying to unwind my own thoughts or emotions around something that's been on my mind, and that's the deck that I turn to pull from and then do several pages of journaling around, that's another sign for me that it's a home deck. So those type of things are signs for you that you found the home deck. But the number 1 thing that's going to let you know that a tarot deck is your home deck is that that's going to be your go-to. That's the deck that you're drawn to work with the most. That's the deck that you feel like is a friend. I'm one of those people who feels like books are friends, and I feel like tarot decks are friends as well. And the home tarot deck is the one that you will go to in those times of, darkness or need, or when you just feel like you need a friend, right? If you're going to one deck consistently, that's how you'll know. So typically it will either be like right away you'll feel a sense of connection and that's your ride or die, like Tarot of Vampires for me. Or like I said, it will be a connection that grows over time. So an example of this could be like the Hush Tarot. Let's say you open up the Hush Tarot and you enjoy the deck, but you don't feel like it's a home deck right away. However, over a 6-month period, you notice that the more you get to know the deck, you start going to the deck more and more. You start working with the guidebook more and more. You start exploring, shifting your preconceived notions about set card meanings with the deck more and more. And then before you know it, when you travel, you tend to take the deck, you pack the deck with you. And 6 months out, you realize, oh my God, the Hush Tarot is a home deck for me, right? So pay attention to kind of like those 2 polarities on the spectrum of knowing when a deck is your home deck, while also understanding that arc from here to here, like there's everything in between as well. But it's really an intuitive hit. And the number 1 thing will be that it's a deck that you go back to time and time again. If you are hardly ever using a deck, or you only use a deck for a very specific purpose, I wouldn't necessarily define that as a home deck. That's just my personal opinion, but to me that's like a very specific tool, almost like a surgeon with a scalpel, right? Like you'll use that for a very specific reason. A perfect example of this for me is the Chicoli Tarot. That is an amazing shadow deck, like amazeballs. You guys know I talk about it all the time, but I don't use the Chicoli Tarot regularly. I don't use the Chicoli Tarot as a daily draw deck. And it's certainly not a home deck for me. It's a shadow work deck. So as you build your collection, you will see that you have specific uses for certain decks, but the home deck is like all around. You can go to it for anything. Like with my Tarot of Vampires, I can use this for shadow work. I can use this for self-reflection. I can use this for inspiration. I can use this for creativity. I can use it to set up a structure for a workshop. I can use this deck for anything. And it feels like a best friend to me. It's super comforting. I want Tarot of Vampires with me all the time. And it's really, it's a part of me. Tarot of Vampires feels like it's an extension of me in a lot of ways. So when you have those feelings around a deck, that's your clarity that you're working with a home deck for you. And that may also be a deck that you choose to purchase multiple copies of. And I always encourage that because decks go out of print and then they get crazy expensive. So Like if you, let's say you really love Murder of Crows like me, purchase a couple extras because, you know, accidents happen, years go by, decks break down. Even well-crafted decks, you know, there's wear and tear that happens. So having an extra additional copy makes a big deal. But these are some of my thoughts on how to tell if a deck is a home deck for you or not. And the number one thing is that it's your go-to. You're going to feel a sense of connection, and it's your go-to. And you'll feel like it's your best friend, and that's how you're going to know. So I hope you are all doing well out there in the world. I am wishing you a wonderful Thursday. That's the date that this video was recorded. And as always, I am sending you much love and many blessings. I will see you in the next video.